Yep, this way, yep. מכתב ישוב צהריים ייפול מצדקה אלף ורביבם ימינך לא ייגש. I'm going to invite Shirley's immediate family to come forward and join us over here close by. רק בעיניך תביט ושיר לעומת רשעים תירא כי אתה אדוני מחזי עליון שמת מעונך לא תאונה אליך רע ונגע לא יקרא באוהלך. יקראני ועיני עמו אנוכי בצרה אחצהו ואכבדהו אורך ימים אשביעהו והוריהו בישועתי אורך ימים אסבירהו והוריהו בישועתי. על מקומה תבוא בשלום, May Shirley Kozlowich go unto God in peace. And you can all say, Amen. Adonai Natan v'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. V'hu rachum yechaper avon v'lo yashchit v'yirba la'ashiv apo v'lo ya'ir kol chamato. God is given, God is taken away. May the name of the Lord be blessed. And you can all say, Amen. V'yashov ha'afar al ha'aretz k'shaya v'aruach tashuv el Elohim asher natana. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. May Sarah Eta Bat Bela v'Moshe's soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal. Send comfort, God, to those who mourn. Grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow. And we can all say, Amen. So as we stand here together, brought together after 18 months of a pandemic, to stand here amongst each other to pay our final respects to Shirley, I can't help myself but comment on the rain. There's a Jewish teaching that says that mothers who had such nurturing qualities about them continue to nurture future generations of their families and all who love them like a well of water. And it's as if we're standing here in that well being comforted today. The Jewish burial service is which you know that I always like to explain to remind us why we're here. The Jewish burial service is a collection of psalms and recitations. And when we collect those psalms and recitations and we join in community to do so together, we're connecting Shirley's life to 6,000 years of tradition of the Jewish people, the people of Zion, the nation of Israel. So with that, I'm going to begin with the traditional words of the Psalm of David in Hebrew, Mizmor LeDavid. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai Ro'ilo Elzar B'nodeshe Yarabit Zaini Al Menuchot Yenach Aleini Nafshi Shovev Yanachayni V'magli Tzedek L'man Shema Gamaki Yelach Gamaki Begates Almavet Lo Yirarak Yatayim Adi Shivtecha Umi Shantecha Haim Mayinachamuni Taroch Lefanai Shucha Neged Sorarai Dishanta Vashemen Roshi Kosir Evaya Ach tov v'chesed yaradefuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti b'veit Adonai liorech yamim. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want, giving me repose in green meadows, leading me beside the still waters to revive my spirits. Guiding me on the right path, for that is God's essence. Though I walk through a valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod comfort me. You prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness shall be my portion all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. We can all say, Amen. If you ever entered the campus on a weekday, later in the afternoon, almost about an hour before pickup time from Grey Academy, maybe a little bit earlier, you knew Baba Shirley. She was a fixture of pride as she waited patiently against the windows outside the music and art room, proudly listening to the sounds of teachers teaching and students learning. She was doing her most cherished job, waiting to pick up her grandchildren from school. When she knew it was closer to the time of the bell, she'd make her way to get herself to just the right position to see them bound down the stairs straight into her arms, of the person they each must have known somewhere deep inside had the patience and the power to handle it all, because that's what she had done for all of their parents. Waiting to greet them from their day, listening to each of them natter the list of problems and successes, catch every word and devise a plan for what to do, which always began with the famous trip to the vending machine, followed often by, as Paula described it, cheese and crackers where the cheese perfectly fit on the cracker. When Shirley retired from her teaching career, after many years, some 25 or even more, a friend commented to her, "Well, Shirley, now you can be a snowbird." And her response was, "Why would I be a snowbird if I have everything I want and need right here?" And this was Shirley. She knew how to distinguish what was most important in life. Her children and her grandchildren were her jewels. Tara and Paul, Shane and Carly, Samira and Bailey, Paula and Sam. She had patience for their every moment, their highs and lows. She gave attention to every problem, big and small. She listened and she solved. Born in Stockholm, Sweden, March 8, 1949, to Bella and Moshe Shimon, Shirley was firstborn of her sisters. There was Shirley and then Faye and Nancy and Zahava. Her first family, her built-in playgroup of camaraderie, arguments, joy, and fun. These four Schwesters grew up in a home of love and loyalty and Yiddishkeit. And after moving to Canada when Shirley was just 3, she attended Parrish School for elementary, Luxton School, and then St. John's High School, then University of Manitoba, to become a teacher. As Shirley very fittingly and recently described to her eldest granddaughter and confidant, Samira, Shirley explained to her that she didn't have a lot of hobbies because she was taking care of her sisters. She always wanted to become a teacher, and it all started with her first students, her gaggle of little sisters. Shirley went to work at a young age, so she was already set up for multitasking and managing and helping her 3 sisters, still going to school and maintaining her first job, packing nylons as a teenager. Then she moved on to work at the Canadian Wheat Board as a file clerk, moving on to finally classroom teaching, and then English as a second language. She met her beloved husband Sam of blessed memory in high school, and they married July 1st, 1970 at the B'nai Abraham Synagogue. They went on to create an easy, loving, Hamish, fun home for their twins, Tara and Shane. Their home was, of course, central to the lives of Shane and Tara, but also to all of their friends. Their doors always open as a comforting environment, serving as a backdrop to the upbringing for many of us. The central force was Shirley. If you were lucky enough to have grown up with Shane and Tara, you belonged to Shirley. If you were a newcomer to Canada and you were lucky enough to be her student, you belonged to Shirley. If you were lucky enough to be friends with Shirley, decades younger, decades older, childhood from childhood, or as a colleague, you belonged to Shirley. And belonging to Shirley was like being in the protective wings of someone who was bestowed with the divine wisdom of truly understanding the most important thing she could do in life was make others feel special. This would bring her profound joy, others' profound joy, and solace for all of Shirley's years. Solace and seeking comfort was something that Shirley knew the need for as a child of Holocaust survivors, and especially after she lost her husband, Sam Kozlowich, so early in the path of their married life. And while Judaism and Yiddishkeit held an important role in her life from early on, it was after Sam's passing that Shirley turned to her synagogue community for daily prayers, potentially seeking to be closer to God in her time of loss, having the deep understanding that her ancestors had taught her, whether she knew it or not, that she could look death straight in the face. Instead of being consumed with its darkness, she could overcome with affirmation of the belief that life is a gift she is grateful for, precious and holy, and worth the attention she was able to give both the big and the small details in life. There would have been a section in the daily prayers that Shirley would recite to herself often in the silent Amidah. And in honor of her, I want to read these words to you. It's often referred to in Hebrew as Ta Chonen. And it means like this, quote, "You grace us with wisdom to teach humanity perception. Bestow upon us your knowledge, insight, and understanding. Blessed are you, the granter of wisdom." Jewish educator and writer Erica Brown describes this kind of attention as follows, and I thought I should quote an educator. She says, quote, "This kind of intelligence involves exquisite and often contradictory balance of curiosity, instinct, caution, and risk." And whether Shirley needed this prayer to reacquaint herself with the self-assurance that she had already been given this gift of wisdom by God, I don't know for sure. But I do know for certain that this is how she lived her life. She was the kind of teacher who connected with her students on far more than how to speak and write. She gave them the tools they needed to succeed, which was, she taught them also what it felt like to matter. She learned all about their lives, their country of origin, which not only furthered Shirley's robust worldly knowledge, but instilled in each child memories of her that would cause many people later in life and in all walks of life to stop what they were doing, turn to greet her, their teacher, Mrs. Kozlowich. As Shane described, as only Shane can, this caused some interesting scenes and proud ones too, and maybe slightly awkward. When her family witnessed, a police officer, for example, in the middle of an arrest, complete with handcuffs and a gun, turning around to stop what he was doing, to greet with utter jubilation and softness his teacher, Mrs. Kozlowich, the woman who gave him his start in this country. And while Shirley had big opinions, she had some self-restraint to not often want to cause too much controversy, which made the best private eye rolls, or knowing sideways glances, or hiding in the bushes at Camp Masad to spy on Tara, who after all had completely lied in a letter home saying she had broken her arm. Shirley convinced Sam, her partner in crime, and he did it, of course, to drive Shirley to Masad, to hide in the bushes, to see what was really going on, likely knowing her daughter may have been just slightly dramatic in that moment. Shirley worried about others worrying. I always found this fascinating because we knew as kids she was probably the parent who worried about us the most, and yet she was always telling us not to worry. I suppose this is also what made her a well of wonderful advice and guidance that would actually diffuse the problem. She could speak to you in a quiet way, like she did at her kitchen table often, or in her teacher voice that would command immediate and direct attention. She was such a presence in the lives of her grandchildren. These skills made such an impact on the well-being of their families, standing by the sides of Carly and Paul, supporting them as much as she did Tara and Shane. She now had 4 children. And she did what she always did for them. She understood what they needed and made it as easy as possible for them to flourish. She could bring order to chaos in a flash. She could calm an argument with her wise, stern, or soft words. She had the discerning ability to choose which voice she should use. As Sammy described about his Baba, he looked on in amazement as she got control of his friends at a birthday party, and that somehow they were all in trouble and he wasn't, or so he thought. She was the master study buddy for them all, taking weekly spelling tests to a new level of achievement, and the reminder of the importance of not memorizing and to do the math. I think Bailey summed it up so well when she told me through her tears, but with such confidence. I'm going to miss her smile and her hugs. Baba gave the best hugs. Many of us can envision Shirley in every scene of our childhood experiences. The biggest cheerleader on those games' sidelines, or audience of any production, or at the foot of the bed to listen to our tears, because she shared the joy of our successes and felt deeply the sadnesses of our failures. I think we can be comforted, and listen closely. I think we can be comforted that while Shirley was taken from us all too soon, she did live to experience being the cheerleader for a new generation to do what she did best. She got to make sure now that her grandchildren could feel her presence at every school Pesach Seder she managed to somehow genuinely enjoy 4 times over sometimes. 4 Chagigat for Torah and 4 for Sidur. Frozen hockey games she bundled up to see, countless movies and lunch dates, ballet classes and dance competitions, and even TikToks that we've even seen Baba Shirley starring in. I mean, come on, that takes guts. Countless hours of board games and trivia, sitting on the floor or sitting on the bed, endless hours and attention for the children. And her famous matching Hanukkah pajama sets she looked forward to giving the 4 grandchildren every year. When I sat down with Shirley's grandchildren so they could tell me about their Baba's life from their perspective, one of the first memories that lit them up was Baba going on the London Eye Ferris wheel with them. That even though she had gone 50 years earlier on the Ferris wheel with Zeta Sam and he had scared the bejeebers out of her by further shaking the seat they were on as only he could, the kids were actually stunned when they asked her if she'd go on the Ferris wheel, and she said, "I guess so. I guess I'm going on the Ferris wheel." Not only did the kids talk about understanding the risk she took for them to experience that with them, because they knew she was a little scared, but the relief she showed them with the way she squeezed each of their hands and hugged them at the end and said, "Phew, we did it." They told me this story while they were all lined up on the sofa. Sammy and Shane, Tara and Bailey, Paula and Carly, Samara and Paul, all huddled together, squeezing each other, holding hands, just the way Baba would have wanted them to. I thought to myself in that moment how proud she would be, and that she'd be telling me over my shoulder to take the scene down exactly, Tracy, and not to forget and get the order wrong. Because this is exactly how she wanted things to be. Especially because they were eating the chocolate bars she had given them in their last care package. So in that moment, they were doing what she had done so many years before. They were looking death in the face, finding lightness, and a glorious way of remembering their mother and Baba. I knew in this moment that Shirley's wisdom had prevailed over all else. May the future generations of her family, her children and grandchildren, her sisters, Nancy and Neil, Zahava and Klaus and Faye and Carl and Ari and Mariah and Christian and Sienna, may you continue to be inspired and informed by Shirley's knowing, loving way. May it bring you the kind of intelligence in this world to give each other and others the gift of feeling special. Tehi nishmatat B'tzor Chaim, may her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she forever rest in peace. And we can all say, Amen. At this time, I'm going to move into the prayer that we refer to as the El Malei Rachamim. Rachamim is Hebrew for mercy or compassion. And I'm going to now draw my attention to the camera, which is, of course, behind me and has been behind me this whole time. But that's okay. So I'm just going to welcome Shirley's family that are joining us online and her loved ones that are joining us online. And I'm going to invite all of you that are online to please join us in standing up for the El Malei Rachamim in Shirley's honor. El Malei Rachamim Shochein B'meromim Hametzah Menucha Nechona Tachat Kan V'Shchina במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר רקיע מזהירים את נשמת שרה את הבת משה ובלה שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן תהיה מנוחתה אנה בעל הרחמים הסיריה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר אמן. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the good to the soul of Sarah Eta Bat Moshe Bebela, who is gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she forever rest in peace. And we can all say, Amen. I'm going to now invite members of Shirley's immediate family that are standing right here who would like to come forward and place some earth into the grave. This is considered the highest act of chesed shelemet. That's the chesed shelemes, is chesed shelemet. It's the act of something you can do for somebody else that cannot be repaid. And we do this with an interesting, some people call it tradition, some people call it a custom, some people don't do it at all, and that's okay too, where you use the back of the shovel instead of the front of the shovel to symbolize that you're not shoveling in the regular way, that we're in a situation that we're not happy about. We're showing our dismay. And that's just to show it to show that. That's what that's about. The other thing that we do is we place the shovel down so that the person behind us has the opportunity to begin the action from the beginning, from picking the shovel up, putting the dirt into the grave, and then putting the shovel back down again. There are gloves and there's hand sanitizer over there. You can see it on the post. But I'd like to keep the shovels first for the family to come forward. There's easier to use earth and sand over here, so I'll invite you to come now. Shane and Tara, Carly and Paul with the kids. And Faye and I think Nancy is back there. Whoever would like to participate. said my mic isn't on. Baba Dorothy Carley's Baba just coming forward, who also shared a very special shared many special conversations with Baba Shirley at that kitchen table often. So I think what we'll do now is we're going to chant the words of the Kaddish, and then anyone else who would like to have the opportunity to also put some earth in the grave. You have to be careful, you have to socially distance, you have to use the hand sanitizer and the gloves as you wish. So the words of the Kaddish, people often refer to the words as the death prayer. They're not even in Hebrew, and so therefore there are no Hebrew words, but it is actually Aramaic, and it actually doesn't even mention the word death. The Kaddish, the words of the Kaddish from to make holy, is a reaffirmation, us facing death in the face and reaffirming our faith and our belief. And it ends with Oseh Shalom. Even in the time that we gather in deep sadness, we're praying for peace on all of the earth and a peaceful time for all the nations. So I'm going to invite everyone who wants to join, and her sisters and niece and nephew, everyone who's online, to please join us, and anyone else who would like to. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah be'alma divara kirutei ve'amlich malchutei b'chayachon u'vyamechon u'chaye d'chol Beit Yisrael ba'agala v'zman kariv imro amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam u'lalmei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudasha berichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechamata damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imramav uyaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. So at this point, I'm going to give anybody who'd like to come to me